Hey there, welcome to the really late show with Chris and Craig. Craig's not here, and our other co-host Laura Kessel isn't here tonight. Stuff came up, which makes sense. So I got my what do you call it? My relief pitcher, and if I have a relief pitcher, I gotta call on. Man, Jeremy Newman's a good relief pitcher to call on. He's with us tonight. Jeremy's the editor of the Side of the Post. Jeremy, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing all right. It's been a long day. It's been busy out around Circleville parts.
Yeah. You're based down in the Circleville area. Mm-hmm. Side of the Post covers some of the areas south of Columbus, the rural areas. What's happening? Give me a quick overview of what you guys are reporting on. If someone wants to check you guys out tonight and into tomorrow.
Well, the big thing is, of course, everybody knows about the Circleville Pumpkin Show.
And we'll talk about that later. Let's.
Okay. Locally, I think that we had a few things happen today that were really fun. Fall leaves is a huge thing right now.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, this is almost peak season. According to ODNR, peak season for the leaves changes next week, so you're really seeing some of those colors pop. So okay. I was checking that out today. Last night, the police department gave their overview on what's going on in town when it comes to their yearly up-to-date since the beginning of the year. They gave me calls of service, things like that, and they had about 14,000 calls this year so far. So
okay, wow.
And that's quite a bit for a small town that's only got 14 to 16,000 people in it. You think about how many calls that is.
Yeah, definitely a lot of interesting stuff going on in those rural areas. And like I said, man, if you're down in that Circleville, Ross County area, man, another good outlet for news. I know I'm a Gannett guy by heart, so I definitely support also the Chillicothe Gazette and Lancaster Eagle Gazette. But man, don't stop there. Support the Side of the Post too.
Yeah,
lots of good places out there covering areas. I don't know anything about the Circleville Herald, but do what you want to there. I hate to say don't support local journalism, but
no.
Definitely if you had three choices. Support Side of the Post, support Chillicothe, and support Lancaster. Let's say it like that. All right? Yeah. Fantastic. Well, let's first talk. We do a lot of football on this show. And obviously, big story going on. The Ohio State Buckeyes, great start to their season. They're undefeated.
All home games, too, except for this last week. I mean, what is that all about?
Yeah, I don't know how that works. But hey, a nice break in the schedule. I mean, I know sometimes in their non-conference, games, unless you have a big opponent, some of these games you're definitely going to play at home, and that's where you play the games. Like anytime they play a MAC team, or if they played Arkansas State, they're definitely not going on the road to face Arkansas State. So, being the school and the prestigious program they had, some of those games are just going to have a home,
Well, I know that the Notre Dame game that was the season opener was a huge game for Ohio State. Those tickets were expensive. I don't know if you gauge those tickets, because I'm always trying to get to a game. Because if you haven't personally been to a game, you should experience that. Because I understand that a lot of people always say that. I can watch it from a TV better than I can some seat in C deck or D deck or whatever. But there's this is amazing feeling when you go to the games and actually experience it for yourself and just kind of watch it unfold. And so I'm always checking for ticket prices, and they're not cheap. A lot of your off teams and stuff like that, they can drop in value, about $70 to $80 a piece. But the Notre Dame game, I think they were close to $500 for like nosebleed sections. It was a big game because Notre Dame hasn't come to Ohio State and played in the bowl in a very long time.
Yeah, next year's going to be different. Jeremy, I'm looking ahead to the 2023 schedule. They actually start the year at Indiana, which would be interesting. But then they're home against San Jose State, home against Western Kentucky. Then they go to Notre Dame. for what should be a really interesting game next year. Yeah, kind of. Ohio State. I'll tell you, Jeremy, it was interesting when I first moved down here to Columbus. They kept saying Ohio State is like our NFL team, and it's true. Man, so much, especially in years like this year, Ohio State is playing well.
What year don't they play well? I mean, let's face it. When's the last time you had a bad year?
Well, I mean, for Ohio State, a bad year is like even.
One loss.
In the last year, I could think of that was like in the transition from Jim Tressel. I remember, things were a little bit lean for a little bit there. They Tressel left, and for a while, Ohio State wasn't playing super well.
It's funny you talk about that, and you're right. Well, Ohio State guys, if they lose one game, it's like the season's over with, we're done, But the same guys, will sport the Browns and the Bengals hats, and they'll have 3 losses, and they'll be like, "Well, we're gonna rally and go to the Super Bowl." It's funny.
Well, I'm looking this up because I'm intrigued by what happened. Remember Luke Fickell temporarily replaced Jim Tressel as the head coach. Fickell had a tough time. It was very interesting what he went through with Ohio State that year. Obviously, Tressel left a little bit early, and I think there was a little bit of transition, not knowing what was going on. I think Ohio State won the same amount of games as they lost. It was kind of a rough time for Buckeye football then. But, everything ended well. I mean, Ohio State obviously came back and they played well. Luke Fickell ended up going down to UC. He's been a really good coach down there for the Bearcats. It seemed like everything worked out well for him.
Right. I think he had, 4 losses in his little time there. I think that was the maximum there.
Well, while we were talking, I was looking this up. At Ohio State, he was the head coach. It was like a transitional year.
Mm-hmm.
They ended up 6-7. Can you imagine that?
Yeah.
Yeah, 11 years ago, the Buckeyes actually lost more games than they won in a year. They did make the bowls, but they lost in the Gator Bowl. They ended up going 6-7.
Oh, I remember that game. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we lost badly in that one, right?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it was a rough year. Very uncommon for Ohio State to have a year like that. But ever since then, things obviously bounced up for the Buckeyes. You had Urban Meyer, and then after Urban left, you had Ryan Day. But, you're right. Ohio State is usually a lot better than they are having rough years, but they had a rough year back then. It's kind of different for the Buckeyes.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Yeah, so Buckeyes currently they're 6-0. This weekend they play Iowa. Iowa's 3-3. Iowa's interesting. Iowa has a really good defense. Their offense is struggling. I was telling Pierre Holland earlier about this. Be interested to see how Ohio State matches up against a tougher defense. I don't see Ohio State losing this weekend, but Iowa presents a good challenge on defense. I'd just like to see how Ohio State matches up with a defense like that in Iowa. They're not going to lose because even on a bad day, Iowa has a rough offense this year. But I'd just like to see how Stroud performs against a defense like that.
So what are you saying is that you're afraid of Ohio State's defense against Iowa's offense?
No, Iowa's offense struggles, and Ohio State's defense is getting a lot better.
Mm-hmm.
I think what's going to be interesting is Iowa comes in with a really good defense. Now, Ohio State has not been stopped by anybody, and Iowa will not outscore Ohio State. It's going to be a 4-touchdown win from Ohio State. I just like to see how Ohio State's offense fares against a better defense like Iowa.
Ohio State's been averaging like 50 points a game. You know that,
right?
It's ridiculous. It's a ridiculous.
Yeah. Well, I mean, let's take a look at Iowa. It's interesting. Iowa's defense has played pretty well. Now, the offense has been awful this year. It's just hasn't been good. But let me look at some of those games to help you out here. as we're talking here.
Okay.
Yeah, it was interesting. Iowa lost last week to Illinois. Now Illinois is 5-1. They're a good team. 9-6, Illinois won. Not the highest scoring offensive game in a long time.
Yeah, Illinois has always been kind of, in my definition, like an SEC team. They throw the ball a lot. They don't run as much as like your Iowa and your Minnesota and stuff like that. That's got more of that big defense. That Cornhusker, big old defense. I feel Iowa has always been kind of like a Ducks team, where they're a lot of flavor. They throw and they move. And I see Ohio State kind of being like that nowadays. We got a little bit of defense, but we are definitely starting to throw the ball way more than we used to. I mean, I remember 5 years ago or so, we would run the ball up the center like 3 and 4 times just to try and get yardage. And we wouldn't, we always had those running quarterbacks, and that doesn't seem to be happening this year.
Well, I mean, look at traditional Big Ten football. I mean, you look at Woody Hayes, 3 yards in a cloud of dust. And it's funny how Ohio State has kind of migrated away from that. Big time college football now, there's a lot more throwing. There's a lot more throwing the short pass to the guy. Hopefully he gets a good matchup on somebody could break it deep and everything. There are other teams in the Big Ten, like Iowa, that play more of the 3 yards in a cloud of dust philosophy. I'll give you a prime example of this, Jeremy. Iowa started out the year against South Dakota State. They won the game 7-3. Now, you might sit there and say, oh, okay, they must have scored a touchdown. The other team scored a field goal. They won. Guess how they won, Jeremy? They actually had 2 safeties and a field goal to win 7-3, which is crazy.
Right. That is crazy. Like, I always get tickled when I see one of those odd balls like that, that safety, the 2-point conversions, just those odd numbers, because you just don't expect them. And I'm sure like the big betting places and stuff like that, they're like, oh man, it's just like everybody's betting on those points, and those points are just so abnormal. It's funny.
Yeah, and Iowa, I mean, they've lost a game. It's 10-7 this year. The most points they've scored is 27. They beat Nevada 27-0 early this year, and they beat Rutgers 27-10. You compare that with Ohio State. I think Ohio State won the Rutgers game by 45 points. So we know Ohio State's coming in with a better team. It's interesting though, because Iowa doesn't give up that many points. The most they've given up so far this year is 27 to a good Michigan team. So like I said, and I think that was one of Michigan's lower scoring games of the year when they only scored 27. So I'm interested to see what Ohio State ends up with score-wise. Ohio State's going to win the game.
That's going to be a really good comparison, isn't it? Because everybody's looking at where Michigan sits and where Ohio State sits. And Michigan winning last year against Ohio State, that's going to be a really solid comparison to say, hey, Michigan scored this, Ohio State scored this. That'll get some hype going for that big game.
Well, and look at it this way: Michigan scored 27 on Iowa. That was by far the most points Iowa's given up. I mean, they've given up 3, 10, 0, 10, and 9 the rest of the season. So the most they've given up, other than the Michigan game, has been 10 points. So, like I said, I don't see Iowa having the offensive, to match up with Ohio State. Ohio State's win that game. But I'd like to see, like I said before, how CJ Stroud does against a better defense in Iowa. I think it'll be a good test for what happens as the season rolls on.
Who else have they played that was any good? Did they play anybody? They played Illinois, as you said, and Michigan, right?
Well, I mean, they played Rutgers. That's tough this year. They played South Dakota State. Now, South Dakota State's 5-1. But again, South Dakota State's not in the main division that Iowa's at. They lost to Iowa State, which was kind of a bad loss. Nevada, I mean, they won by 27. Ohio State would probably win that game by 60. They didn't beat Rutgers by much. Michigan's a tough team. Illinois is 5-1, but I'm not super excited about Illinois this year. I mean, I think they're good enough to win 5 games. I wouldn't call Illinois like a contender in the Big Ten or anything else like that.
So, Ohio State did play the Rutgers also. So you can kind of look at them like that, right? I mean,
yeah.
So Ohio State beat the Rutgers, I think 49-10, right?
Yeah, and no, you're right. I mean, you can definitely judge based on that. A lot of times the games were played differently. Like that Ohio State Rutgers game. I mean, Rutgers knew they were outmatched. They literally on every play ran the clock down to the end, to try to take more time off the clock. Like they knew if they hurried it up, Ohio State could score 100 on. So, yeah, it's a somewhat good comparison when you're saying, hey, look, Ohio State won this game by that much, while Iowa won by that much. Ohio State could have won that Rutgers game by more. I mean, I would try to reduce the clock.
I do feel that they kind of went off the accelerator in that second half.
Right. And I think the Buckeyes just want to get out of there. I mean, you get to the point where, yeah, you like to score touchdowns, you like to run the clock up, or run the score up sometimes if you need to. But then on the other hand, sometimes you're like, man, let's just get out of here without getting hurt. Let's stay healthy and everything. And I think Ohio State was just going into that. If you remember, too, that game ended up kind of wild, where the Ohio State punter took a punt. He saw he had an opening. It was kind of an impromptu fake punt. It wasn't called by Ohio State. He just saw he had an opening. He went for it. Rutgers didn't take it too kindly. It was a skirmish on the sidelines. Greg Schiano, former Ohio State coordinator, who now is the head coach for Rutgers, ran over to the other side of the field. He and Ryan Day started screaming at each other. And I think, although Day was really upset with Schiano at the time, he probably just said, hey, let's get out of here. I know this guy. I don't want to run the score up on him. Let's just get out and be normal.
I think that was covered in the press conference, too. I think they asked a question, and that's basically what Ryan Day said. I was defending my guys. It was a heat of the moment, and, they talked about it after the game, and everything was good.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see what ends up happening this season. I think the Buckeyes are in good shape. I think they, Iowa, they should win. I think the test is going to come next week. They play a pretty good Penn State team. They're going to play them on the road. We don't know yet, but, they're both undefeated, so it could be a Saturday night game. Be interested to see how Ohio State reacts to that. I think on paper, they're a better team. But you never know. Sometimes those night games with Penn State can be a little bit rough. That's going to be a good one. Ohio State later in the year goes to play Maryland. Maryland's kind of a pesky team this year. Again, Ohio State's a much better team on paper. Be interesting to see how they match up. And then Michigan comes back. And
that's the big one. That's the big one this year.
Right.
And I think, you can even see it in the ticket prices. Like I talked to you before about ticket prices and people being interested in games and stuff like that. That one's like $400 right now to buy tickets.
Right. And I think the assumption, always Ohio State Michigan is going to be a really great ticket, no matter who's good or who's bad or whatever. I think there was an assumption after Michigan beat Ohio State last year, like, oh, man, can't wait till this year. Ohio State's going to be so much better. They'll win by a lot. Well, Michigan's still number 4 in the polls.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I think you can make arguments saying Ohio State's definitely a better team on paper. But, last year we said that, and Michigan will end up winning the game. So.
Right. You can't sleep. You can't sleep on some of these teams. Like you said, the Iowa team, you can't sleep on those guys. You can't sleep on any of those big defense ones like your Wisconsin, and you can't sleep on your Minnesotas. You can't sleep on those guys because their defense, if they can hold up their defense to you, they can grind you and win a game. I've seen it happen before. Iowa, I've seen them happen before. Didn't they upset us like a few years ago? I think Iowa did. Yeah,
Iowa had better offense at that time. And I think Ohio State had Dwayne Haskins maybe at the time or something. Ohio State's defense was – Haskins actually played a decent game that game, but the defense really fell apart. Iowa scored 50 points. It was just crazy. Yeah, am I thinking about the right game?
I think so. I'm gonna look that up now. Now you got me curious.
Yeah, it was. It was a wacky game, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, that was the first game of they lost that year. I'm pulling it up now. So
yeah, 55-24. Yeah, I remember that. That was crazy. And sorry, Dwayne Haskins lost to Purdue. That was the upset with Haskins. It was 55-24. The quarterback for Ohio State at the time was JT Barrett.
yeah,
Good game was November 4th, 2017. Man, Iowa, Nathan Stanley, which I don't know if we've ever heard that name after that game, but man, Nathan Stanley threw for 5 touchdowns. And while JT Barrett, 3 touchdowns and 4 interceptions. JT had a rough game. So
Yep, that was a rough game, and I think it was a lot of defense in that one.
Well, Ohio State gave him 55. So, yeah, not good defense from Ohio State.
I'm talking about Iowa.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was about to say, I don't think we can say Ohio State had a good defense that game. It was pretty.
But that's the way Ohio State's been for a long time. It's when you talk about this year, what I see personally this year more than anything else is that Ohio State's got both. They have the defense and they have the offense, and it's not that trying to squirrel around with that running quarterback. You have a passing quarterback that can throw the long ball. You have a quarterback that he'll throw it in a place where no one else can catch it. In that NFL style. I think that we really have what it takes this year, and I think that really the only person that can stand between us right now is Michigan.
Yeah, definitely. Lots of interesting stuff there about Ohio State. I sent you a link with some memories of Ohio State. This is like the 100th anniversary of Ohio Stadium.
Yeah,
kind of fun. Looking back at the history and everything. It's just a very historical place. It was funny. I think the first time I was there in person, I was starting my journalism career. I covered the state track meet. And it's funny to see how the stadium changed. I think at that time, it literally was the horseshoe. Because if you think about it, there was an opening to the stadium.
right.
And, hey, more money could be had by putting more seats in the side. So they did that and they filled the stadium. But, yeah, a lot of good memories. I'm going to put that link in the podcast description. You can read more about that. Good stuff by Ohio State.
I wonder how many people, because they had that horseshoe and had that space, I wonder how many people literally stood at the end and watched the games.
Yeah, good question. I don't know, but again with sports, and I'm not blaming Ohio State. It happens. Man, if you can put more money in building more seats, why not?
I think it's a great section. When you watch that, because that's the student section. And you watch those guys, they really get into the game. They're always with the banners and all that stuff. It's fun to watch the students because they're involved,
Yeah, definitely. Very good. Oh boy. Oh, very interesting. This game against Iowa, noon on Fox. So if you're looking forward to watching it, you can watch it early in the day on Saturday. Jeremy, I'm going to be an older man. I like my noon games.
Yeah, Ohio State's had a lot of later games and night games this year.
Yeah.
Remember a few years ago we didn't have night games. We never had night games, and now Ohio State has changed, and they've been doing those 7 p.m., 8 p.m. games. And I don't know. I've experienced a couple of those actually at the shoe. When you get out, you're tired.
Yeah.
But
well, back in my old newspaper days, we used to have 1 a.m., 2 a.m. deadlines. So, hey, if you had a night game, whatever, game got in, the paper, everything was okay. Now deadlines are so early. Let's have early games, Jeremy. I'm game for a 9 a.m. game for
9 a.m. 9 a.m. Everybody be drinking coffee instead of they'd be mixing. What are they mixing with their coffee?
Yeah, let's get these games early in the day. so we can go enjoy ourselves and come home and relax.
Well, it doesn't matter what time the Buckeye game is. I'm always watching some sort of football, college football. I'm a huge college football fan, even bigger than NFL guys. I'll stream it all day long.
Well, here's what we can do. Okay. You might be saying, okay, if we have them early in the day, the word people go watch at night. We need some football to watch at night. Well, play the replay of whatever the best game is. Because here's the problem. If you say we're going to have the Ohio State-Penn State game, what happens if Ohio State wins by 50? Mm-hmm. Well, then people watch it tuning out halfway in between. Let's have all these games in the morning, earlier in the day, and then you can sit there and say, well, whatever the most exciting game was, if it was the Ohio State one or Youngstown State or whatever, put that game at night.
That's one thing I actually hate. I'm watching Buckeye football and they end a blowout game, and I'll still watch them. I'll watch it from the beginning to the end, because I'm a Ohio State fan. But there's games on at noon, other games, and there's especially now, because we're now talking about games that can be upset games and games that can change that timeline, that top 10 timeline. And I want to see those games. I want to see, upset alert. I want to watch that. And sometimes I can't watch that because I'm watching the Buckeye game, even though, this is more riveting. I still want to see my Buckeyes. So that's a good idea.
All right. Very good. Jeremy, appreciate you coming on. But
Absolutely.
Before we end, we got to talk about what you want to talk about. I know you're a Ohio State fan, but I contacted you today and you said, Chris, I got to talk about some Circleville Pumpkin Show.
Pumpkin Show. Pumpkin Show starts on the 18th. If you look at on the flyers and stuff, it says it starts on the 19th. Okay, I'll give you a secret right now. Pumpkin Show happens on the 18th, and this year on the 18th.
Why aren't they saying it starts on the 18th then?
Okay, so locals have what they call a preview night. Okay.
Oh, okay.
So they bring in all the rides and all that stuff. And, because they shut down the roads on Sunday. This Sunday, they'll shut down the road in the downtown area of Circleville. And then they'll bring in all the rides and all the food and all that stuff. So they're already working those rides and stuff throughout those first couple of days. On Wednesday.
Well, let's back up just for a little bit. Let's help people out that don't live in Central Ohio, because this is something that people from all across the state go to. Circleville is probably about 20, 25 minutes south of Columbus, right?
Yep, on US 23. You can't miss it.
Okay, great. So it's the Circleville Pumpkin Show. Now, you got to help me out, because I've had this conversation with some reporters to the Columbus Dispatch before. They like it called the Pumpkin Show, right? You better not call it the Pumpkin Festival. Right?
Well, you know why, right?
No, tell me. I was wanting to know.
So there is a pumpkin festival in Ohio.
Oh.
It's in Barnesville, Ohio, and they actually and there's this huge rivalry. It's like Michigan, Ohio State,
really?
because Barnesville. It's a smaller show up in Barnesville. They had theirs about a month ago, but they have an open contest for their pumpkins. So somebody from Pennsylvania that grows a giant pumpkin can bring it into Barnesville, Ohio, and weigh it and be in that contest. Okay. So the difference between that and Circleville Pumpkin Show is there's a small area that you can only enter in, and that's pretty much Pickaway County. Now you have a little bit of Ross County, you have a little bit of Fairfield County, and I think a little bit of Fayette County that's in that circle that you can enter in, but it's a very small circle. But Barnesville up there, they actually have the heaviest pumpkin in Ohio. They've weighed the heaviest pumpkin in Ohio up there. And that's because the guy that just weighed it, and this actually happened this year, he brought it in from Pennsylvania and weighed it in Ohio. And that became the biggest pumpkin in Ohio. So that kind of overshadows the pumpkin show. So we don't take kindly to Pumpkin Festival in our area.
All right. So call it the Pumpkin Show. They'll beat you up.
Yeah, right. All right. It's kind of serious.
So. Yeah. We had a Columbus Dispatch reporter that was getting like angry emails. I'm like, It's the Pumpkin Show. Be nice.
Yeah, people get serious about it. If you come down to Circleville and you say Pumpkin Festivals, you will most likely be recorrected immediately.
Recorrected, beat up by the The Pumpkin Gang.
It's
right
serious.
around Circleville.
Like,
Okay.
I'm not from this area. I didn't grow up in Pickaway County or Circleville. And, I got schooled on that. Everybody gets schooled on it. So.
Very good. Looking for a couple things sticking out for me. We got Little Miss Pumpkin Show parade and Miss Pumpkin Show. So if you're in the pageants,
the big pageants, I've been doing a lot of those stories on Side of Post. The stuff, digging into these girls, these amazing girls. I mean, when you read some of the background, these girls are so involved with so many different things in their school. They have a long list of what they do. They're always in basketball or baseball or soccer, and they're also always involved in 3 or 4 different clubs. And then they say, on my off time, I like to work out and do weight lift and target practice. It's incredible, some of these girls and how much they put into themselves. It's going to be a really hard choice when it comes to that. But let's go back really quickly to the 18th. Like I said, 18th is the preview night for Circleville. Now, this year is special on the 18th. Okay, so like I said, Pumpkin Show doesn't start technically till the 19th. 18th is preview night for locals. What's big this year is they're bringing in McGuffey Lane for the 18th, and he gets to play, and they get to play pretty much the rest of the night. Right there in Pumpkin Show Park in downtown Circleville, McGuffey Lane will be there playing for free. It's going to be a big concert.
Oh, McGuffey Lane. Okay, yeah.
They're well-known people. They're huge. They're going to be, and they're coming in for the preview night for the locals and stuff. So not as many people come on the preview night, the 18th. The rides are running, all the food's running. It's the same pumpkin show. You don't get the giant pumpkins. They are not there. The giant pumpkins come in on the next morning, on the 19th in the morning. That's when the weighing happens. That gets done around noontime, and then you'll have the giant pumpkins that'll be right there at the end of the trailer. And, all the pumpkins will be weighed. That's that part of the show. So after the 19th, you can come and see those. And then we start rolling in the parades. There's tons of parades. There's 7 parades for the pumpkin show. Parade of Bands is one of the big ones. That's one of my favorite ones. I think that's on Thursday for that one. Let me look that up real quick.
Is that the baby parade, right?
No. There's a baby parade. There's 2 parades that day.
Okay.
So.
There's a bands and youth organizations at 8. Is that
Parade of Bands is at 8 p.m. That's it right there. Okay. So there's 2 parades on Thursday. The 8:30 is 3:30 is the baby parade. 8 o'clock is the parade of bands. Now the parade of bands is all the schools from the area. So we're not talking just Pickaway County. We're talking about Ross County. We're talking about Fayette County. We're talking about Fairfield County. Sometimes Columbus. All these, and you're just talking about. You ever hear those bands in the parades, and they're just loud and they're amazing. Well, that's what happens that night. You get band after band after band.
No, I apologize in advance for bringing this up, but it looks like Saturday night the Queens are coming. Now, I don't know if you're aware of the big story with that, Jeremy. Bucyrus, they had to take away the crown from the Bucyrus Queen. Do you know if the Bucyrus Queen is coming to Circleville?
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, apparently they never really figured out what exactly happened, but apparently she, I don't know. It was really strange. Like they said she wasn't befitting a queen, but there was no like real big scandal. Like she wasn't in Playboy or anything like that. It was just more like they're like she's, and apparently like I really don't know what happened to her. It was really confusing, to be honest. So
that's interesting. I know that Mr. Phoebes, he runs the Queen pageant. He's a good friend of mine. I talked to him a little while ago because I'm doing a lot of those Queen stories right now. And, he told me that, over the last 10 years, they've actually established what you're talking about, like a code of conduct that they have, that each participant has to sign and read, certain things that they have to do, especially if they're queen. They have to be within that parameters and stuff, and look a certain way, and do certain things, throughout the year if they're queen or second or first attendant.
Yeah. Okay. Here we are. I'm looking up this story because I want to make sure we're fair to her.
Yeah.
She was terminated after she attended the festival luncheon in direct violation of the board's instructions. So apparently, if you're a queen of one of these festivals, you get to travel around the state. And apparently, she went somewhere they didn't want her to go, and they said, "Hey, you're out."
That's crazy. Yeah, that's
yeah.
what happens if you follow the Pumpkin Show Facebook page, whatever. You can see the queens, and they go to all these festivals because, of course, there's festivals in Ohio all the way from March, and that's what these queens do from all these different ones is they'll go to each other's parades and ride in those parades and stuff and represent their part, and they have to travel. There's a lot of travel there.
Right.
There's a lot of dedication to that.
All right, and then I gotta go in a minute too, but let's talk about the pumpkins. I think last year, what was it? 1,800 pounds was the biggest one. Is there?
Did you see
getting a new record?
Did you see my video where the guy took? I videoed that one, and the guy took a chainsaw to it after he won. He had it back in his house, and he actually cut it, and you can see how thick the walls on these pumpkins are. They're like this thick, like 12 inches. Really interesting stuff. You check out that video if you can get a chance. Okay. I actually spoke to that guy in the last week. Actually, I spoke to him last night, and he's got a couple pumpkins, and he's coming back this year to kind of defend his title. A big one to watch is Bob Liggett. He's the local favorite. He's the one that has the heaviest pumpkin in Circleville already. 1,900 and change is the biggest pumpkin, 1,900 pounds. What's that?
When did that happen?
I think it happened 4 years ago, I believe.
Okay, so that's the record. So everyone's trying to beat that record.
Yeah.
All right.
Everybody's trying to beat that. That's the number one record. So Mr. Thornhill was the guy that won last year, and he's coming back. I talked to him this week. Another guy that came in heavy last year was Pritchard, Mr. Pritchard.
Okay.
And John Pritchard, he came in at 1,620 pounds last year. Now he's got a giant pumpkin, and I've been trying to get a hold of him because I've been told that he's got a big pumpkin too. Bob Liggett, I went and talked to him personally over the weekend, and I actually seen his pumpkin, and it is massive. I would say that it is it's plus 1,500, no doubt. But you never
are these guys rivals? Are they fighting each other? Are they like?
Actually, no. It's kind of an amazing thing, Bob Liggett is one of the what I would call the OGs of pumpkin growing in the area, and they have a pumpkin growing association, and they really kind of actually help each other out because these guys start planting these pumpkins in April, and then they babysit them from April all the way up until October. They don't go on vacation; they just watch these pumpkins. So, these pumpkins, they have this huge, massive amount of greenery that goes around them. And they're subject, because they're planted outside. Part of the rules is they have to be planted outside. They can't be in a greenhouse. So, they have to watch, where the greenery is. They have to watch rodents. They have to watch bugs. They have to watch fungus. This year was a big year for that because it rained a lot and then it was really hot. So they had to really watch how this pumpkin, because this pumpkin grows, these are 1,800 pound pumpkins. So they grow and this group, they work together like, hey, I got a problem with my pumpkin. So they'll really run to each other's and try and help each other out. It's really more of a friendship than anything and a fun competition.
So if Bob Liggett's an OG original gangster, is he part of this pumpkin gang that comes after you if you don't say pumpkin show? If you say pumpkin
maybe festival? You probably don't want to say that in his presence. You probably yeah, he'd be like,
Bob's going to take one of those 1,900 pound pumpkins and run after you with it. That wouldn't be good.
So he's our local eye doctor. He actually does my eyes. He's actually a doctor. He's Dr. Liggett. It's pretty neat guy. I would expect to see him on that stage this year. Biggest pumpkins. I've seen it myself. I've touched that pumpkin already this year, and it's massive. It's a massive pumpkin.
We can't bet on sports yet in Ohio. Are we able to bet on the pumpkin festival?
No, I don't think we can. Not unless it's like, a handshake or whatever. But there's 2 people to watch this year, maybe even 3. One of them is Dr. Liggett. He definitely has a pumpkin-winning pumpkin. John Pritchard, who has shown up before, he also has a pumpkin-winning pumpkin. I haven't actually seen that one yet. I've been talking to the guys, but that's what they've said. And then Stephen Thornhill, he's the guy that won everything last year. He's bringing back, I think, a couple of pumpkins. He's got one large one. Not sure. He's not feeling confident about it, but they don't give all their cards out immediately. They don't.
There's not gonna be any cheating here, like there was up in
you putting
Northern Ohio with the fishing. Like we're not putting weights in the pumpkins or something.
You have to put a lot of lead in those things. You're talking about the scales a couple 100 pounds. I don't know how you'd squeeze those inside of one of those, but.
All right, well, watch these guys closely, Jeremy.
Yeah.
I know you're just a website editor, but hey, it's a big process. We all have to watch each other with that stuff.
Yeah,
so.
and I cover that too. I'll cover it because it's a really interesting to watch them. They bring in these bobcats, okay? Because this thing's the size of a car.
Pounds. Yeah,
it's the size of a car. So and they're grown in a field, okay? So how do you get it out of the field onto a truck and then down into downtown Circleville? Right. So they bring in these bobcats with these cranes and they get underneath of them with these ropes and they lift them up. And this is 1,800 pounds. I've seen those bobcats kind of, and this is a field, so the ground, the equipment will sink into the ground. Last year, Mr. Thornhill is the guy that won. I was actually out in his patch for I think 3, maybe 4 hours filming because they had one piece of equipment that actually sunk into the ground and it was too soft, and he actually got stuck in the mud because it's a farm field.
And, Bob Liggett was behind that, right? He wasn't like
right.
He poured more water in the night before.
Right. Well, actually, what happened is that Thornhill told me later on that they cut the water off on these pumpkins like a week before weigh-in. But him being a young grower, because he's younger than me, he's probably in his 30s. Being a young grower and excited to possibly win, he just kept his water running. Even when he shouldn't have, because you shut your water off and then the ground kind of gets harder, because the water kind of dissipates. Because these things take gallons of water a day. You wouldn't believe how much water is pumped into these pumpkins.
Well, hey, Jeremy, we're at the end of our time, man.
Okay.
I wasn't sure when to go to the pumpkin show because I'm like, man, what do we have on the pumpkin show? Man, we probably could have spent the whole hour talking pumpkin show.
Oh, I could talk the whole hour on pumpkins. By following these guys and talking to these guys, I've really gotten a respect for these guys and how they grow these. I mean, come down to pumpkin show, check it out. These pumpkins are massive and there's tons of them and it's fun. There's a pumpkin carver that shows up. There's pumpkin everything, pumpkin pizza, pumpkin brownies, pumpkin anything that you can think of, pumpkin beer. Come down to a pumpkin.
Well, why don't you do this? Remind me of this, Jeremy, because I'm getting old. I'm prone to forgetting stuff. What about the Wednesday after the big pumpkin show? Let's get whoever wins. Is it Liggett? Is it Thornhill? You think you and him could appear on the podcast? How about that?
Yeah, we can probably do that. I definitely will be interviewing, so I'll know a lot about the pumpkins. And like I said, I've already been in fields, so I'm gathering information as we speak. I'm out there. So
yeah, that'll be a good one. Maybe for like the 9 to 10 hour or 10 to 11 hour to see when they're available. Yeah, let's do that. So
yeah.
All right. Well, Jeremy, I am up against the time, but it's been a thrill to talk to you. Again, check out, is it sideofpost.com?
Yep, sideofpost.com. And any social media that you can that you have, Side of Post, you'll find us. We have some great stuff. And check me out. And I post all the time. And I post in Pickaway County, Ross County, Fayette County, Fairfield County, sometimes some Franklin, and sometimes some Hocking County.
And check out the dark web for Silo Post's big pumpkin coverage, the pumpkin gangs and everything. They're going
I'll be live. I'll be live covering a lot of that stuff. You'll hear this same voice.
Oh, wow. Very good. Well, Jeremy, thanks for your time. And thanks for checking out our podcast here at the Ohioan. Check out our sponsors, YouTube TV, a great spot to watch football on the weekend. Click our link. You'll get some money off. And Cash App. My goodness, if people are trying to pay off the judges, on the Pumpkin Festival, use Cash App to give cash back and forth. No, I'm kidding. That wouldn't happen at the Pumpkin Festival. But it's a great way of, paying your...
You said Pumpkin Festival.
What's that?
You said Pumpkin Festival.
Oh, Pumpkin Show. Uh-oh. I'm hearing a knock on my door. I think it's Bob Liggett. Look out.
The Pumpkin Show.
Yeah, the Pumpkin Show.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, enough of that, Barnesville. I think you got the Pumpkin Show. Circleville's got the best. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Jeremy, I really got to run. But thanks, man. It's been fun. Have a good one. Thanks for checking out the Ohioan. Have a great day, everybody.
You too. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Mooney. Welcome to what is our new Hope Interrupted podcast based on the work from our book, Hope Interrupted, that I co-authored with my good friend Byron McCauley.
Hey, Jennifer, I'm looking forward to this podcast as much as I was looking forward to writing this book with you. We hope to interview some high impact folks as well as have a little fun.
We're going to cover stories of hope. To learn more about our podcast and our book, please visit www.hopeinterrupted.com.